Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of McCall Media TV, whereby in today's video we're going to show you how to solve a problem when you are working in a WordPress website and you've maybe loaded in a new plugin, but now for some bizarre reason the page title on your site disappears. If you've had something like this or experienced something like this before, this basically is the video that you need to watch because I have the solution. And in today's video I'm going to show you the problem, how to research it, find the solution, implement the solution, and then test it. And it's all happening in today's video. Okay, so let's first of all understand what the problem is here that I'm talking about. So we are going to dive over to my left-hand monitor screen where you can see I have been playing with a website. The Art of Entrepreneurship is a sideline venture to McCall Media Ltd. And I've started to populate the content page. I've started to throw some other pages up here. So there's the About page, of which you can clearly see that the About title shows in a nice grey bar. Yes, it needs to be styled. Yes, I need to put content, but what I want you to focus on is that the infrastructure, the framework of the page exists. There is a title bar and a title clearly showing. Now the problem comes when you click on the events. Now this plugin is a brilliant plugin, but for some reason it's having a bit of a clash in personality with the theme that I'm using. Sometimes it happens. And what you can see here is an event listings page. And then obviously if you go into the event itself, there's a test one that I've done. Neither of these two pages, either the events listing or the event details specifically, are showing that title. So there it is again on the About page. We are missing this grey bar and the title name of the event and page. Okay, so how do we fix it? Well, first of all, I'm quite familiar with this events theme. So let's dive into the back of our WordPress website. First of all, if you want to use this theme, this plugin, there's the plugin. It's called the Events Calendar, and it's actually by a company called the Events Calendar. So if we was to click on this right now and go and look at it so that you know what you're looking for, there's their logo, kind of like a little funky hand, and it's free to use. It's a really nice little tool, and obviously if you want all the fancy features you can upgrade and pay for it. So that's the tool or the plugin that we're using here today. Now in fairness to them, there is nothing wrong with the plugin. It's just that the code on the page is executing in the wrong order for that title here, that section, to basically display it. That it's having a bit of a problem. It's kind of like doing the last task before the first task. Everything's back to front. So to investigate the situation, what do we do? So first of all, we are going to use the F12 key to bring up the inspector, and if you're not familiar with it, you can right click and click on inspect that way as well. And then down in the left hand corner, we're going to investigate the page. So first of all, we've got the content section, and then if I move my cursor up, you can see it's trying to select the header. So that page title, the whole entire section, isn't even populating at the moment. Now, because I am familiar with this plugin, it was quite quick for me to dive into the events settings and actually investigate that maybe the template theme that I'm using wasn't the correct one, the template. So there you can see that the default events template is the one that's in use. And you can see here that there's the full page width contained and stretched, which are the templates that my WordPress theme provide. So let's select the content contained. Now, if I come back down and save this page to make that change permanent, and we refresh the page, you can see here now that the grey bar doesn't show on both the listings and the actual event details page, okay, but it still isn't showing a title. Now if we investigate a little bit further still, again by selecting this title area and expanding, let me just move it up a little bit so you can see it a bit better. Let me just move the page around, there we go. You can see here, if we explore this H1 HTML tag, the opening and closing tag, there is actually nothing being populated between the two of them. So if we right click and edit and just make sure that it's all working fine, test page title name, and I click off of it, you can see now that the actual page will populate a title and show it. So what we've got going on now is a framework that is correctly built, but for some reason the variable that holds the name of the page isn't being populated before the page is being built in the browser. So if you can imagine, when a browser loads, it's a linear process, just like we read from top to bottom on a page. We read line by line by line by line, and as we read that information into our brains, we know that information exists. Browsers do exactly the same thing when the website page loads. It will read the top line and it will execute code by code, line by line, all the way down. Now, if you've got a situation where the page title needs to load and then the content of the page, and they're in the correct order, everything is fine. But if those two things are in the wrong order, the page content will still display, but the code to call the page title isn't being executed. And that's what's happening here. So the variable exists, but it's not being populated before the content is being put on the page. So this is the solution to fix this problem, and you basically need to write a little bit of JavaScript. Now, in full disclosure and giving credit where credit is due, this solution that I'm about to teach you is actually devised by a really lovely guy in India called Vicky. Here is his website. He's a full stack developer, and my business uses him on a regular basis. If our work diary is too busy, too manic, or something too complex for my team to handle, we will dive out and use Vicky as an extra pair of hands. And he's the one that actually discovered this solution by tinkering on another client website for me. So thank you very much, Vicky. His URL is www.vickycodeaddict.com. You can contact him or through me. I'll connect you. He's on LinkedIn, and you can reach him on Skype and that kind of thing. And obviously drop him an email, or if you want to reach out to me, I'm quite happy to connect you both in LinkedIn. I'll also put all the URLs for him at the bottom of the page. Now, going back to our problem. So now we know everything's working. Let's go and actually fix this JavaScript issue and get the code to load properly. So to do this, we actually need to go and fiddle around with the actual template PHP files. So log into your FTP panel. There's the website. That's its public files. Go into content, themes, WordPress, and then if we scroll to the bottom, you can see here there are 4 template files that we can work with. And if you remember, if we go back to our website here, we've got these different contained and stretched. I'm quite familiar with this WordPress plugin theme because I use it on my other YouTube videos as well, so I'll put some links of that around on the screen. But if we come back here, we can see here that we need to select one of these two. So I think I've got let's go with the stretched, so you can see the name. So there's the full width stretched content, and I'm just going to refresh it and make sure that's still working. Right, all is good. Okay, so in the back end, we're going to take a copy of this file. We're going to drag it to our local computer. There it is. I'm going to rename the file, and we're going to test first of all that this actually works. So let me rename the file first of all. So events. Okay, let's just make it nice and simple. Okay, and then I'm just going to put that back up into my hosting. So now you can see there are 5 template files in existence. Okay, so we now know that our theme can select a new template. There it is. So before we do anything else, we're going to overwrite it in a second, but what I'm going to do is we're just going to edit this file, because what we are going to do is change the file name so we can see it in the listing. So I've just opened up Visual Studio. You could do this in Notepad, you could do it in Dreamweaver, whatever editing software that you like to use. And you can see here there are some notes that says template name, and it says full width stretched content. And if you look at the actual the wording, that is exactly the name that is being used here right now. So if we change this, called events template, and I'm going to put McCall Media Ltd abbreviation at the end, just so that it's really clear for you guys how we're changing the name. And I hit file, save, and we then go back to the hosting. Yes, and we just move that correction up here. We will now be able to refresh this page, and with a little bit of luck, as we come in here, you can now see, even with my wrong spellings, the template that we've just created. So now let's make sure our WordPress website is working with the correct template. What we now have down here is the page. Now, if we remember rightly, to go back here, we've got the header, title area, and the content. So before the content loads, we need to make sure that the variables for the title are populated. So we're going to create a big old space in here. Now in WordPress, a WordPress file, page or a blog article, they're all stored in the MySQL database as a post. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're working on a page or you're working on a blog article right now, if you're having a similar experience in other areas of WordPress and other plugins, we need to get a copy of that post, that object, and tweak it and fiddle around with it. And that's what we're going to do right now. So with our code, the first thing we're going to do is write the word global post. So we're going to get a copy of the global post. Now, as all kind of objects, this is going to know all sorts of different things about the page, but we want to know if we're working with the correct object first of all. So the next thing that we are going to have to do is just test this, basically what this post is containing. So we're going to create a variable called post object. Okay, and into that we're going to get the queried object. Now this is where Vicky obviously came into his own. I'm not as familiar with the WordPress infrastructure and how it manages its files. So Vicky is very familiar, and he is aware that there is a function already existing called get queried object. So he's used that to populate a variable in JavaScript called post object. Okay, now we've got a copy of the object in use, we need to test which one it is. So the next thing we need to do is run an if statement. So if statement is obviously going to have a parameter, curly bracket, and then obviously it's either going to have a true or false value. So we need to accommodate basically an if else statement here. Now the actual parameters that we're going to put in here is obviously we've got our post object. Okay, I'm going to just stick that in there for you. Okay, and we are going to test the name of that object. Okay, which is what the dash and the triangle bracket shows. So we're testing the name, and we're going to see if it's equal to the term tribe events. Now that's a single quote round each of that because it's a text item, okay, or a string. What we're going to do is, where did I get the tribe events from? Okay, so before we go any further, let me just quickly show you how I know what that's called. If we come back into our WordPress website, before we changed this template, it was called default events. So we know that this template was the one that they wanted us to use initially. So let's just refresh our page and everything will disappear. And if you go into the page source, I knew that this template was the one that they wanted us to use. So if we go and find the word tribe events, just to speed this process up, you can see here in the green that the name exists. And if you look down through, there's 5 instances of this. The moment the body part of the page, the HTML page, loads, you can see here that it's using a template called tribe events. So by kind of like a process of elimination, a little bit due diligence, testing and tweaking, we kind of discovered that essentially we are looking to test that the object contains tribe events. So that's how we came across this name. Okay, so it wasn't just by luck that we named it that way. So that's the object that we are testing for. Now we need to handle if it's true or false. So if it is true, we basically want to inject the name of the page. So let's go back to our post. So that's the actual global post that exists in the MySQL database. Okay, and into that we want to insert our object, or into the post title, into its actual field, title, the name, events, let's say schedule, schedule. There we go. All right, job done. So we are now putting this string, events schedule, into the title attribute of the global post object, because what we've done is we've grabbed the object and we just want to make sure we're working with the correct one, but this is actually what's being populated on the screen. So now that we know that this is the correct object, let's make sure the post title actually has some data to display, is essentially what's going on here. Okay, now obviously once we've done that, we also still need to handle what happens if it's the wrong object. So else what we're going to do is grab our post, okay, and we're going to assign to it our post underscore object, whichever one that may be, and we are going to set up post data, and we're going to basically insert into the MySQL database the information of our post, okay, because it could be that the title field on this particular plugin or theme doesn't exist, and so we need to populate it a different way. So I'm just going to hit that and sort out my code. And actually a little bit of a credit, let me just go and just, because I like to be thorough, copy as a credit to see for more info. There you go. So there we go. So there's a little credit to Vicky as well there. So this is basically how the solution works. So let's now save it. You can see the black dot, meaning we've got to save the file. Again, don't forget we are writing and the code at the moment on our local version. So let's go back to FileZilla. Okay, it's asking us again, do you want to update it? We're going to click yes. But we are going to just drag it over left to right. Okay, so it's now in our hosting. Let's go to our website. I've lost it. Bear with me a second. There is our page, and we are going to refresh the page. Oh, we've got to go and change the template. My bad, because we were demonstrating a second ago. Save and refresh. And there we go. So there's our test event details. So at the moment on the details of the single post, it's grabbing the title of the post, which is great. And if we go to our events listing, there is the title event schedule, which is where we populated it here. So for example, we could have called it Hello World, whatever we fancied, save it, go back to FileZilla. It's going to ask if we want to update it. I'm old school, so for me it's always a case of dragging left to right, but I know it's updating on the page as well, but you can't break a habit of a lifetime. And I can refresh the page, and now that event schedule could be called Hello World. Okay, so that is basically how you can investigate where the title is, what's going on with the templates, whether they're actually populating the infrastructure or it doesn't exist at all, tweaking around with the templates in use, and then obviously identifying the title variable and seeing if it's got content in it or not to display on the screen. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Please, if you can, do subscribe to my channel like I asked at the beginning. I am a small YouTuber. It is a huge effort trying to get my channel established on YouTube. If you can imagine, there is a very, very big competition base, and so by you clicking that button gives me a little bit of a thanks to say that I'm doing a good job, and obviously helps my channel out. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on another video real soon.